America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome all of you to our regular August meeting at the start of our new school year, and we're all excited to get started. Kay, did you want to introduce? I don't see any extra visitors, but we do have all of our administrators, and I'll introduce two people. If you want me to do that now, I can do that now.
We do have two everyone is a special guest, don't get me wrong, but we do have two very special guests in the audience, and I'd like to introduce them, and I'll start with your new superintendent, Tom Giard. And Tom, as all of you know, was very much a part of the convocation the other day, and very well received. We're happy to have him here this evening as part of our transition activity, and we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that later in the meeting. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
And then before you introduce Andrea, Tom, we have a special gift for you. So you feel like you're part of our Waterford-Lancaster community when you go to all the football games. Sweatshirt from the Waterford High School.
Do we budget for this? Very nice. Thank you very much.
All right. And then our second special guest is a person I've already had the privilege of meeting as I was meeting a lot of people in the Waterford community while I've been here. It's Andrea Simmons. And Andrea is the new director of the Friendship School. And we've invited her here this evening not to make a speech, but just, if you don't mind, just give us a little update on your opening at the Friendship School.
Everyone, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of the Friendship School and Waterford Public Schools. We had a really wonderful opening day. My, I think, favorite part of the day, don't get this wrong, but my favorite part of the day was the dismissal because we really did it well. So, according to the staff, it usually takes about an hour to get 500 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds on the bus, but no. It took us between 35 and 40 minutes.
Wow,
so I'm
great.
really excited about that. And the kids are really excited to be there. We had minimal crying, which is also really important for 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds. So it's been a really wonderful opening start to school. We are implementing some new programs to be as seamless as possible with Waterford. I met with Craig a lot about their reading and math program. So we're implementing workshops in kindergarten. And for pre-K, we are using creative curriculum and something called Story Workshop, which really ties very well with the workshop model for kindergarten. So we're really excited to get those things going in school with a lot of TV. And also we're really attending to the importance of the social and emotional growth of our young children. So we are implementing a fun classroom and a new program out of Yale called Ruler. So those are some really exciting things that we're starting. It's a lot of change, but going to bring great things to our kids. Thank you for having us.
Thank you
for coming. And I can attest to the children having a smooth transition. My granddaughter goes there, and she came home from school so happy yesterday. It was just such a joy to see that. So thank you. We're going to go to public comment now, and I just want to bring everybody up to date on the bottom of our agenda. We have it's Waterford Board of Education Bylaw 9325, and it addresses public comment at board meetings and designates that a 3-minute time limit will be allowed per speaker for public comment related to an item on the meeting agenda, and that a maximum of 20 minutes per meeting be allotted for any one item on the agenda. No speaker making an oral presentation shall include charges or complaints of a personal nature against any individual board member or individual employee of the Board of Education, whether named or not. All such charges or complaints concerning individual employees of the board should be sent to the supervisor of the person to whom the complaint relates. But, we do welcome public comment. I don't want you I don't want you to think we don't want you to speak, but we just have to follow our own policy with that. Okay. Now we're down to... Oh, is there any public comment? Sorry. Is there any public comment tonight? Okay. Okay, now we're down to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, any discussion or corrections? I just have one correction, Joyce, on committee reports, and maybe I didn't say it correctly, but we have several hundred thousands of dollars left in the high school, in the new high school budget account. It's at 1,000. And okay. I have a question about food service. Are they going to be okay this year? Because I noticed they're in the...
That's a great question, Shirley. And so what you see in this monthly report from food service is kind of where they are in the moment, but what you don't see is what they have in their checkbook. And so they have, as you know, at least a minimum of 3 months funds in their checkbook, and because of all the school construction, we're probably a little bit better than that right now. When the state grants and reimbursements come in, then this temporary negative becomes positive, but we're in good stead.
Okay. And then just one other question. For our budget summary for this school year, there were some budget balances that are zero on those line items.
Are you looking at the closeout?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think the shares, there were some zero.
Because these line items have been encumbered.
So we don't owe anything more on that line item.
Yeah.
Oh, so we pay the whole sewer service?
Well, it's encumbered because we know what those costs will be. So those are encumbered for the exact amount.
Okay, so we actually have the exact amount in our... Okay, all right, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. So we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously. Now we're on to reading and review of correspondence. Hey, do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay. I have one letter from Dr. Joseph Wood. He helped us find our wonderful new superintendent. And just so everybody knows, too, he received over 30 applications. He went through all 30, and he took out the people that weren't qualified. And out of the 30 some odd, we had 17 applicants that our whole board looked over. And we interviewed 4 that rose right to the top, and then we were lucky enough to get Tom. So he's our new superintendent. But we really worked, just so you know, the board together. We all worked together over the summer, and I think we found the best superintendent that we could. And it was so nice for all of us to work together, even though it took a lot of time. But it was a good experience. And I just want to read you Dr. Wood's letter. He said, Dear Mrs. Archer, in addition to corresponding with your newly appointed superintendent, we have sent a letter of appreciation to all the other candidates who applied for the Waterford Public Schools superintendency. We are most appreciative of you and your board's personal involvement in designing Waterford's executive search and for your guidance throughout the search process. Thanks to your efforts and the efforts of many other dedicated citizens, the search process had integrity and was supported by the community. I believe Thomas Giard is an excellent choice to serve as your new superintendent. He is an accomplished administrator with the talent, experience, and personal skills necessary to be an effective leader for the district. We shall continue to work with Tom to ensure his success. As part of our search service, we will contact Tom to schedule, at his convenience, and entry consultation for newly appointed superintendents. Please express my personal appreciation to all of your colleagues on the Board of Education for extending to NESDEC and to me the opportunity to work with you. Congratulations to all of you. If there is ever an occasion for NESDEC to be of assistance to you in the future, please let us know. Sincerely, Joseph Wood. And it was a pleasure working with him. He was such a big help, and he was available anytime we needed to call and get some information. So we were very lucky. Okay, superintendent's report.
Okay, we have several items on the agenda here, but I promise you we'll get through this pretty quickly. And it's actually going to be a combination of the superintendent and assistant superintendent's report, because we're sharing responsibility for reporting out on these topics this evening. We start with the opening of school activities, and board members who were in attendance at the convocation the other day already know about that great activity that occurred. And there are on your table in front of you, there are some photographs. There's an article that was in the paper announcing prom, and then you should have another cluster of material that's attached right behind their photographs that are included for you who weren't able to be there to kind of get a sense of what went on there. So we had a very successful convocation. I would like to point out that the looping slides that were here as you came in were photographs taken on the very first day of school, and to tell you more a little bit about what went on in each school on that glorious day. And I thought it was a miraculous day, absolutely. And Craig and I went ourselves to the schools to see that miracle happening. Certainly made me feel good. Craig was smiling as well. So the principals can tell you a little bit more about what happened in each school, and I'd like to ask that we start with the elementary principals, and eeny, meeny, miny, mo, who wants to go? All right.
So, Victoria, Quaker Hill. We had an excellent start to the school at Quaker Hill. Students came in smiling, happy, ready to come back, and backpacks and shoes. Parents were very happy to be dropping them off. I want to say a special thank you to Pat Fedor for taking care of my incoming kindergartner. She had Summer had a wonderful day. Thank you, Pat, for taking care of my daughter. But Quaker Hill had a great start. We're looking forward to a great school year.
Thank you.
I will echo Chris's words for another wonderful start this year. A lot of great work parents, both from the parking lot and to the beach. Luckily, we have a solid number. But a really nice start, and also a good opportunity to compliment our bus drivers. An example of that this morning is the kids were coming off the bus for a minute, and the driver was talking to a little boy who had lost a rock that he was bringing to school for his teacher. And another child said, "Oh, it's just a rock," and the driver looked at him and said, "But to him, it's a diamond." And he was on the floor looking for the rock. So, however, our drivers is phenomenal, and that helps us have such a good start.
The same with Hazagachi. The start just went great, and kids were excited to be back. Parents were just as excited. And everything really ran smoothly. The ending of the day, the buses were a little bit of a challenge, but again, the bus drivers were great, helping out. Because we didn't lose anyone, so the days just flew by, and all of our staff was there, really helping out in the morning, getting all the, quite a few new students, new registrations, really making sure that every kiddo got where they needed to be. Got off to a great start.
Thank you.
We had a great start. The 7th and 8th graders ease right in, like the school year as we're going up the month. 6th graders definitely were nervous about lockers. The kids were off. Pretty difficult. But we were immaculate, and kids really enjoyed the organization and welcome, and a lot of older kids about the younger kids, so it was a really nice good day. Transportation was superb, and very positive. Parents were very
And at the high school, it's going to sound like a broken record, it was a great start. In some ways, school actually started a week ago this evening. We had our freshman orientation last week, and about 90% of them came. We had 60 upperclassmen there as guides for them.
That's great.
And so that every freshman is very worried about the same thing. Can I find my advisory? Can I find my locker? Can I find the cafeteria? They know that everything else will fall into place, that they can take care of that. So we had them primed and ready to go. And they actually had a very smooth start to the day. And, it was a very positive, high-energy day. And just one little moment in the day that I think sort of illustrates what it's like to be at Waterford High School. We have a new security guard this year. And at each lunch, we stopped the kids for a moment once they'd gotten their lunches and introduced them. In each lunch, all three of them, she got a round of applause from every kid in that
Wow,
security.
that's nice.
For a security guard. For a teenager. That's what it's like to be in my teenager. It was a great start.
Okay. Well, thanks to the school administrators. Everyone here knows that couldn't happen without you. So kudos to all of you. And the photos that we were sharing with you I was the photographer, so no judgment there. But you can't capture in the still photography the energy that we experienced going through the schools and in and out of the classrooms. And so compliments to all the staff who most graciously invited us into their classroom. And when we entered, those kids were already engaged. The teachers who were wonderful in helping students who needed assistance, we saw that all over the district. And they were doing exactly what good teachers do and staff members do. So it was very, very, very well done. But one compliment goes to a person named Barbara Brigham. I don't know her well. I've met her. I know her challenge. And I would say you guys are really lucky to have that person in your school community doing that magic, because even with a couple of little hiccups, that was, I've already said to Craig, the smoothest opening for a school transportation system of a district this size that I've ever experienced. And it takes someone like Barbara to make that happen. So I want to say that publicly to support her. It was really excellent. So do you have any questions for us about opening? Anything that we haven't covered?
Do we have a lot of new students that registered late? Or?
We have an enrollment report for you. Can we talk about
it?
Well, actually, that's my next thing.
Okay.
So you have on your table one sheet summary. Looks like this. And this gives you a snapshot of where we were on August 27th. And I think probably the things I would want to point out to you, if you take a look at total district enrollment, which is at the bottom of the page there, your total enrollment as of that date is 2,519 students. And you had in attendance on the 27th, 2,481, which is a variance of 38. Across the district, which represents about, I think, 98% attendance on that day. And if you want to break that down, let's go back up to starting with the elementary schools, and if you go to the far right of the grid, you can see that the total enrollment currently for Great Neck is 311, and in attendance on that particular day, 307 students. Looking at Oswegatchie, 360 are enrolled, 353 in attendance, and Quaker Hill, 347 enrolled, 341 in attendance on that day, and then that gives you, for your elementary program, subtotals of enrollment, 1,018 students, and attendance on that day, 1,001. For your middle school, your total enrollment is 675, and your total attendance on that day is 663. That 675 represents a variance of approximately 25 additional students picked up over, well, I would say subsequent to the last day of school when students left in June. So thank goodness those students are spread across those grade levels so that the impact of that can be absorbed in the current staffing profile. And then at your high school, 819 enrolled with attendance on that day, 810. So I would say you are very high attendance, actually, which is something that we're monitoring now. And you know these numbers will roll around a little bit between now and October 1 when you do your final head count. What we are doing, and I'm sure Tom will continue, is monitoring this attendance over the next few days, because it takes, typically in any school district, at least you must get past Labor Day before you begin to lock into what those solid numbers are. So that's the report we can share with you this evening. You'll see a report like this coming your way again, I'm sure, in September. It's an update. Right?
Okay, what jump out at me is Oswegatchie. From reading it, where it's the second grade, only 3 classes, they have 63 students. Quaker Hill has 65 students, and they have 4 classes. What's the administration's thinking on that?
There are a number of things that are considered. First of all, the class sizes within a school going, from the lower grades up to the higher grades. We consider, how do we balance in the context of that. And then beyond it, of course, you can see there's similar patterns going across the grades at Oswegatchie as well as Quaker Hill. There is perhaps a need to look going forward at some of those class sizes at Oswegatchie and how they compare, whether they're comparing favorably to what Quaker Hill is, and in our mind that range is still acceptable. So there would have to be students coming in that would bounce those numbers up to 23s and 24s.
It looks to me like it's a variance with Great Neck and with Quaker Hill. Do we have money in the budget for that this year?
I would say we're monitoring that very closely, and I will say yes to that question in terms of yes, we have reconciled those accounts, so I can sit here with assurance and tell you that there is money to address that in the event that their decision is made. I would say you perhaps need to wait just at least after Labor Day to see how these numbers play out. But to have a contingency plan going forward in the event that it's decided to make an adjustment there is not a bad idea, but that would warrant a lot of discussion at the school level, obviously, and involving Tom and Craig.
Perhaps we ask that you report back to us at the next meeting. It just jumps at me.
The contingency teacher in the budget is included in these numbers, and that particular position was placed in Quaker Hill, and the impact, as you would think, helped to reduce the class sizes. And if you're looking at second grade at Oswegatchie, and if you put a 4th teacher, for example, there, you would you bring those down to, somebody do the math, I think it's between 16 and 17 across the board. So anticipating that you might have a question like that, we have reconciled the accounts to see if there is room to do that, if that's a decision that's made going forward. And Craig, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you heard it say that we've used the contingency feature already, and we really had to see from the turnover savings, to answer your question about do we have the funds available. And then we also just have to look at the class makeup. And so when Kay was saying we have to talk about everything, you can have a class of 22 and it be a highly efficient and effective class, and you can have a class of 22 with a different dynamic and student makeup that really would require it to be lower. And so it's a great question, Greg, and we do look at not only the schools across the horizontal with numbers, but then vertically to see if it is. And we reported in June, as you may recall, that we had 2 hotspots, and they were second and third at Oswegatchie. So it's appropriate to really continue looking at that, and we'll be looking at those classes closely and give you more information at the next board meeting. And if we have to make a decision, we'll report that out.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions on this report?
I just agree with Greg, though, because I know K through 2, we wanted to keep the class sizes, a little smaller than, the 22. So that would be good if we could look at that. It's a good idea, Greg, to look at that in October.
Principals, do you have any comment related to this discussion? No? Okay. All right. Our next topic is also summarized for you in a single-page handout. Just like this. You should see it in the stack of paper. Just a very brief update on hiring for this school year, and I'll start my comments by complimenting the work of the school administrators, obviously, who are responsible for organizing the interview committees and rallying the troops. And sometimes that's not easy. Well, I would say all the time. That's not easy to do in the summer months. It's a real challenge. And so they had that challenge this year because there were some positions that we didn't know about, obviously, that needed to be filled. And so they went to work, and they were very, very efficient in filling those positions with excellent staff. And you have in this report, in the left-hand side of the page under certified staff, you can see the result of that work. And we're going to introduce you to these folks in just a second with additional information about who they are. Also included in the report on this page, information about long-term subs that need to be in place. This is information that you probably knew about, in meetings before when you were planning your budget, that there would be a need for some of these positions. Some in the area of paraprofessionals and, of course, teaching. Interns coming to you from the University of New Haven. I think all of them are from that source.
And
Pardon?
And Sacred Heart.
And Sacred Heart, excuse me. And UConn?
UConn?
Very good, okay. So that's an excellent distribution of interns in this district. That's very impressive. Your non-certified staff in the top right-hand corner, the breakout of where they are placed and what their positions are. You'll see that there's, according to where we are right now, there's still one vacancy at Great Neck that will be filled. And I guess I should point out that there is, under long-term subs, we still have one vacancy at Clark Lane. And then student teachers. You have a really good complement of student teachers throughout the district, and all these folks are in place too. So Craig has put together some additional information about who these people are, and if you'll turn to the screen, he'll tell you a little bit about them.
So the next 3 pages are, I'm going to give photo credit to Ann Ogden, who took the convocation pictures, so thank you. And these, I believe, are up on our website as well. And for new teachers, we gave a full bio on everyone during convocation, but just to kind of look at the elementary view with our additional ELL teacher, our band teacher that will cover the 3 elementaries, and then an additional district-wide electrician. We filled those positions. And then here are the new staff at each of the schools. So you can just kind of see Oswegatchie, and then Cricket Hill, Clark Lane, and Waterford High School. And then, as Dr. Griffin mentioned, our long-term subs, and then our interns, and then our student teachers. And as you recall, our classroom teachers have to have some special training in order to take a student teacher. So it's great that they have taken that training, and it's great that we have helping other people into the profession and having our teachers work. And then we honored, as we have in the past, our staff members that have reached the 30-year benchmark and the 35-year benchmark. And we've honored Jean Randall, long-term middle school math teacher, Roland Lengwitz, a long-term custodian with us, starting out at Covanzi and being in Clark Lane for a long time, and then our buildings and grounds supervisor, who was here in the audience, Tom Thurlow, and I think they were very happy to get that honor, and the staff really gave them rounds of applause, which was great. So that's it for the new staff. And then we had a concept, if I can move to the...
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
That, this was a quick slide. We require a lot of hard work from our teachers, and that hard work really isn't always evident day to day as you're doing it, but we really wanted to ask the students, teachers have high expectations of you, and can kind of talk about that experience. And in May, I asked each principal to get about 6 or 8 kids to maybe volunteer some responses, and then over the summer, our elementary technology coordinator, Robert McKinney, put together this video, and it was part of convocation just so that, the teachers would really see why this is important to have high expectations and really put kids back in the focus as it should be. So Joyce is going to start it, and if we can get some sound, then and if for some reason we're having a technological difficulty and we can't get this sound, that this video will...
For me as a student, she wanted me to develop a good work ethic, and I feel by giving us big assignments and really pushing us to do our best, she helped me be my best.
And she pushed me so hard in math that I was able to help out first graders.
So this opened me up to a whole new way of thinking and completing our project.
So she really pushed me, and it was a great experience, and I learned what I was capable of doing.
I had one time teacher who pushed me really to my limits during math, and I didn't think I could do it, but now I'm really good at math, and I get a lot of answers right. She really helped me a lot.
But he is glad really for all the questions on the papers he did. But all of them were challenging, even though some cases they find it easy, or subject to free. A lot of people aren't know about that. The thing is that the way that we code the questions are, you have to understand. Instead of just answering A, B, C, or D, what I have to do is explain why we chose you. What's the root cause? Why are we doing it?
Understand topics more and be more independent. And him was expecting a lot out of us, motivated us to do more for ourselves.
He pushed me to wanting to try to help me become a confident student. And she just never gave up on me. She was like, think of that.
So I was some teacher, and I used to not be that great at reading, but my teacher pushed me, and so I finally got to do it at my level. And now I love to read.
Holding to the same standard that she knows herself to, and so she wouldn't ask anything of us that she wouldn't ask of herself. So she just asked that we were there on time and ready to learn. And
whenever I would write a statement, she would challenge it. She would say, "Oh, really? Perfect." And she would make me explain my thinking and say why I thought this, and make sure that my audience would understand everything that I was trying to say and explain. And it did get very frustrating at times, and sometimes I didn't want to hear any more, "I'll really prove it." But when she would say it at the end, when I heard my talk videotape, it was a lot better than what I started out as being.
Really think that work that word is completed with my system.
Thank you.
Probably all my teachers accepted high quality for me, and they really pushed me to do great things. That really helps me improve myself. Very important, and I'm very lucky to have teachers like that.
So, a measure of our success and the reason that we're here in the organization. So that was also part of conversation.
And thanks to Craig and the principals who helped put that together. It was quite uplifting.
Before convocation, we had, and at your speech, you kind of have what's the professional learning that occurred on Monday. We had over 30 different workshops go on Monday alone. Out of all these workshop evaluations at the end, we didn't have one person that checked disagree or strongly disagree on any of the evaluation forms. We had 15 elementary workshop offerings, and the takeaway from the Teachers College reading and some of the recursive themes were we wish we could have the presenter, Christy, model strategies with students. The handouts are very useful. We'll use these techniques to increase the frequency of conferring. This is great. We will have more opportunities to learn with Christy throughout the year as we have other professional learning days occur. With respect to another presenter that we had to help the staff understand math exemplars, or the ways that we'll be kind of sort of giving kids some rigorous examples to work through. Extremely positive feedback on the presenter. Excellent, wish you could come again. The information was useful to create the rubrics. We'll use this, we'll practice the strategies and become more proficient in scoring, and I think our math coaches will be working on that with our staff during some PLC time. With respect to the differentiated workshops, because then we asked teachers to sign up for a workshop that you wanted to learn more about, and we had our literacy coaches, our math coaches, and technology coaches, really things like, wish we had more team time on this, maybe we can incorporate this into our PLC. The games and activities in the math were presented well, useful, and definitely will be utilized. We'll use blogging and other techniques to increase communication with parents about activities. So really, I think a high degree of success for the elementary level. For the middle school, we've had the benefit of receiving the School of Distinction grant, and the middle school really got some high powerful speakers there for the staff, and the strategies there were very useful and will be utilized. It helps students think for themselves, and really teachers will work on getting the students to lead or talk more rather than having the teachers do the work. And those are again, the big themes that were given as feedback. We also had presenters on iPad workshops for music. Our PE staff did more exploring of the Project Adventure, and now their work is really to make sure what activities and Project Adventure will be done at the middle school and what will be done at the high school to make that developmental structure now that we are have the fortune of having Project Adventure fully installed in all of our schools. And at the high school, under the direction, quite honestly, of the high school administration, so I'm not going to take credit for that success here, they wanted to come up with an ed camp and having our teachers really present our teachers and having the teachers just sort of select some different workshops that they want to go to. And basically there was just a high degree of the teachers enjoying learning from their colleagues and having really that chance to have a lot of choice in their own professional learning. And so kudos to Andre and Allison and Jean for really making that happen. We also had workshops for our paraprofessionals district-wide. We had a presenter come in to meet with all the elementary paras on how to support the workshop model, the reading and writers workshop model, as a paraprofessional in the classroom, and great feedback on that. And then all of the paras worked together to update from a health and safety, kind of some standard first aid and CPR. And again, Erica presented very well in the large group, Erica Bumgardner, our health instructor, and lots of useful information. Hope you never have to use CPR, but again, we're just helping them out. So overall, just all praise for the first professional learning day. And then, as I said, it segued into convocation, and you heard from the principals what a great opening. So it's been a good week.
Are there any questions? Right. Kathleen?
I just have a comment. It looks like an awful lot. It looks like a tremendous amount of work went into getting this first professional development day together, but I'm just pleased as one small commentary to look that the teachers had a choice also in workshops. I think that is that something that has happened in the past, or is the
well, quite honestly, receiving feedback from the teachers on really what would be best for them, and in response to that, we haven't, quite honestly, had this much differentiation in our offerings. With this feedback, obviously this was successful, and the amount of work is well worth it if it's successful.
Thank you. It's obvious. Thank you.
Anybody else? Craig, did you invite the kindergarten teachers at the friendship school to any of these workshops, or are they invited when you have them? Or?
Yeah, so when was the workshop?
Monday.
Okay. Some of us just enjoyed inspired these.
Correct.
Yeah. So not that particularly, but
They are included when you do offer them?
We do really want to work together, and we have offered kindergarten teachers to come in. As Andrea said, the same presenter that's working with us on the Teachers College workshop model, Learn is also contracted to work with all the Learn schools. So that consistent message will be occurring. But of course, anytime that the friendship school can benefit from some of our professional learning, we are open to it.
Because then the students benefit from the workshop. It's great. We want them to have the kindergartners at the friendship school. We want to make sure parents know that the students are getting basically the same curriculum as the kindergartners in our regular
and we've had a lot of dialogue around that already, and we will continue.
I think that's important for parents to know. So thank you.
Thank you, Craig. I'll take the next few items here. The transition of district leadership. We did make a commitment to you, when you selected Tom, that we would work with him to set up a schedule to provide some opportunity for smooth transition of leadership. And so we've been about that business. So I'll just give you a little recap of some of the things that we've done and what's up for next week. We had our first transition meeting on August 13th, which was just soon after he had been named, and that provided an opportunity to bring Tom into the district and began to meet people on this floor, who work in these offices, and to go over just some of the things that I would want to share with him, as the superintendent who's been here the last few weeks. Start to introduce him to, as I said, key communicators in the organization. Thanks to Joyce coming and Cassie and some other people on this floor they put together some excellent composites of what we call critical reading material, things that we could actually put in a big box and give to him so he could take it home and read, and he did. We said, go do this homework. So he took all the reading materials, and then that kept him pretty busy. We know because when he came back to meet with us again, we had time for him to ask us questions about some of the reading that he'd been doing. So that was the idea, is to help Tom get immersed in these materials that give background about the operation here, and he certainly has been a dutiful student in that regard, keeping up with it. He was invited to and did attend the Administrators Retreat, which was held on August the 21st. We had what I thought was a very nice meeting, and you guys were all in attendance. So we had an opportunity to cover a lot of information on an agenda that was important to the administrative team, and Tom was there the whole time. So we invited him into the conversation, and he was, that gave him a great opportunity to spend time with the full administrative team. And when I say the administrative team, we had buildings and grounds represented, in finance and operations represented, in food services, and all the folks who make up the broader administrative team. So we felt that would be a good place to start with meeting with actual groups. And then, of course, Tom was here for the convocation. He made a very special effort to make that schedule on the 25th work for him, because he really needed to be in two places at the same time. But we managed to get him here, and then I hope you got up to Meriden on time to do what you needed to do up there. But that went exceedingly well, and we all know how well he was received. He's here this evening to experience, this meeting, but he's been here since around 2 o'clock today, because he's been taking care of business in HR and all the things that go along with processing that. And then Craig and I have had probably about 2 hours with Tom today. I bought the dinner, and we've had a working dinner. So we got a lot accomplished before this meeting. And then next week, Tom will be back in the district, and we have a very full afternoon scheduled on the 31st of August. We've set up department-level meetings. He'll be meeting with buildings and grounds staff. He'll be meeting with information technology staff in their departments. And then he'll come back and have yet another meeting with Craig and me. And then on the 3rd, we continue with the department meetings. We're calling a special meeting with Special Services Department. That whole staff will be together. Kathy will help with that. And then Human Resources Department will meet with Tom, Business Office, and then another meeting with me and Craig following that. So we're making an effort here to the best of our ability, with limited time, to connect him with as many groups as possible. And then Tom will tell you all about, when he gets here, his entry plan, which then continues this effort to meet staff and in the community at large. So we're building a foundation that Tom will build on to continue the transition. And from my view, it's going extremely well, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have, if you have any questions about that.
I'd just like to thank you for doing the transition plan. It's an important piece.
Thank you.
It sounds like it's very well thought out.
We're trying to cover as much ground as we can. Thank you. I'll move into the organizational chart. You have probably the biggest piece of paper on your stack. and I'm sure the most colorful, is this draft of the district organizational chart. I want to introduce you to this because this has been a project I've been working on, and I want to, to comment on my purpose for doing this and what I think is the intent of this. The basic purpose for any organization to have an organizational chart is to document what the lines of supervision are, and in an organization, when an organizational chart establishes, demonstrates through the drawing here what those relationships are, primary supervisor, for example, or secondary supervisor, job description should support that. So in our efforts, we've been looking at the existing job descriptions and going back and forth to see if we have a match here. And we're continuing that effort right up until I leave, and then some of that work will still be done when Tom gets here. The school district already had an effort in place to update job descriptions, and that's sort of how I came to this project, because I was trying to get to know the organization, obviously looking at job descriptions, and began to notice that some were more up to date than others because that was an ongoing project. So we decided to pull this all together to kind of express what's what. And when you look at this, there's a legend down in the right-hand corner that's of help to you. But what we're expressing is on the right-hand side of the chart, you can look at this as the central office or district level or part of the organization, and how the different departments are formed, and who's working under which director's supervision, and what are those direct lines of supervision and what are some shared lines of supervision. For example, if you look under the Director of Buildings and Grounds, which happens to be in your model with your Town of Shared Services Department, you see by the solid line direct supervision from Jay Minor, who is the director, to all of that support staff, your HVAC people, your electricians, your plumber, and so forth. And then you see the Buildings and Grounds direct supervisor at the bottom, and then you see that dotted line going back up because there's shared responsibility there. So we try to graphically express what those relationships are now. And every box that you see there, except with the exception of Board of Education, which this is a working copy, so there's still some cleanup to be done here. That really should be a different color, not green, because that gets misinterpreted as employees. But we will make that change. So these green boxes are representing supervisors in the organization, and then you see purple boxes for recognizing the certified staff, and then your non-certified staff, and what those relationships are. So on the left side of the chart, that depicts, in a general sense, what those relationships are in the schools. We were not about the business of trying to define every single person or every single supervisory relationship as it might occur at the high school. We were trying to capture the essence of that. We did ask the principals to take a look at this. They did give us some feedback. For example, we made sure that we had coaches under athletic director, and we made certain that paraprofessionals have a secondary relationship with teachers, because teachers do provide input into paraprofessionals' overall performance evaluation, which is pretty standard procedure in public schools. So this is depicting a picture of what is in place right now to the best of our ability to express it. The chart is titled draft, and my intent was to get it just to draft form, because in my mind the next step would be to turn this over to Tom working with Craig and everyone else in the organization to begin to use this as a tool to the extent that it would be helpful to review any or all of these boxes in terms of how this is organized now, and then if any changes going forward, that those be shown in the organizational chart and then be reflected in job descriptions, because there should be I was going to say a high correlation. There should be an exact correlation between what your job descriptions say and what your organizational chart says. And so this is helping with that reconciliation where it is needed. I'll compliment the HR department. There's already been extensive work in updating job descriptions that has gone on for, I'm going to say, at least 6 months or probably...
up to 2 years for some of them.
Okay.
We've been really hitting different collective bargaining. We started with actually consultation of the teachers union with supplemental pay, and then pulled that into the teachers, and then we're working on the support staff.
Okay. So it takes a while to bring everything into focus, but you do have an expectation, implied in your policy that you have a structure to the organization, and then it's incumbent upon the superintendent to document that and to bring that forward. And typically that's done on an annual basis if there's any change to the structure, and so that would be something that Tom would do going forward. And then the other thing that's pretty typical is that it is posted either on your website or on your intranet, where that your staff certainly at minimum has access to this, so everyone has a clear understanding of how these pieces fit together. So it's again a work in progress. If you don't like the colors, change them. That's fine. And I really do mean I just leave it as a tool. And Tom has certainly looked at this enough now, and I think he's finding it helpful to get grounded in how the organization is currently organized. And thanks to everyone who's given input on that. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for organizing this. I think this is really important. And it's important for us to see, the board to see also.
Well, Joyce Cumming needs to be recognized at this point, because when I went to Joyce and said, Joyce, have you ever done this before? And she said, no. I said, okay, let's get started. and so she very willingly, in a very positive, productive manner, just went to work and has been very, very, very helpful. So thank you, Joyce.
That's how she is.
We appreciate that. The next item, just a quick update. Oh, yes.
On the shared services department, there are 2 entities there. That might benefit from the footnote to explain what that is. It's kind of a murky area. We have some agreements with the fact, but it's not fleshed out.
I have learned a lot about that. It's very timely because I've read what I believe are all of the historical documents that support that model. I have just shared those just before this meeting with Tom, and I said, please take time to read these, because I think the footnote is needed, but I think beyond that there's a lot of discussion. And so I'm hoping that a little bit of this prepares a readiness for that discussion, and a footnote added to this at a point where that footnote has real meaning, I think would be very productive. Right now, it's still a little murky for me, and so I'm sharing with Tom what I think is a good place to start reviewing that and coming to talk to you about where all of this is in 2015. And if I'm overstepping my boundaries here, anyone, just tell me. but that's my read on this. And so right now, the footnote would explain what is intended in the documents, some of which are about dated 1990. Okay. Thank you for asking that question.
That's something we should keep in mind.
The next comment is on the retro commissioning project, and you probably recognize this as the Eversource project. Does that ring a bell? Mm-hmm. The Eversource project, probably this time last year, you had a report from Jay. Did you come to the board last August?
We talked about the retro commissioning for
last August. Okay. We have recently revisited this project, and we're not coming this evening with a request for a vote because we know we're not ready for that. But just in case, just a reminder that the retro commissioning project has to do with Eversource, which is, as you all know, the new name for CL&T, provides an opportunity for commercial and industry customers, is what their definition says, but also public schools and municipalities to participate in a Connecticut Energy Efficiency Fund special project, conservation project. So last year there was a discussion of what this project would be and how you would potentially benefit, and there was a survey document, a survey agreement that was presented to the school district. I have a copy of it here this evening, and that constitutes what would be a contract between the school district and Eversource. So earlier in July, we had the opportunity to interview via a phone conference the representative from Eversource to begin to talk more specifically about what that would mean for Waterford. And what we have found out is that there are actually two contracts that we should be looking at simultaneously. One is called the survey agreement and one is called the investigation agreement, and that each of those two warranted some legal review before we would come forward and ask for your vote on accepting those agreements. And that's what we've been doing, is trying to figure out what part of that agreement is benefiting you as a Board of Education and what part of it might not be to your benefit. For example, I've been working with your legal, your Shipman and Goodwin person to assess where your liabilities would be for additional funding in the project under the current, what I call the boilerplate wording of their agreement. And we've identified probably 6 or 7 areas that need attention. And we've also identified that that same kind of scrutiny needs to occur for the investigation agreement, which we just received yesterday. And then after both of those agreements have been reviewed at that level, and we are convinced that they are compatible, that the first agreement, which says it will support the second agreement, actually does that, then we should feel comfortable in recommending to you whether you go forward with this project. So I'm not going into detail again about what the project is because everyone tells me you've already heard that presentation. But if you have a specific question about it, I'll be happy to try to answer it. But right now, the legal review has to be completed before it will be meaningful to make a recommendation to you. Tom is going to be briefed on this fully, and I would think within 2 weeks, perhaps we'll have the rest of that information back from the attorney, and probably by September there will be an update that will either recommend that you vote to engage in this project, or that you do not?
Questions? Excuse me, Kathleen?
Maybe it's just me on the board, but once the legalities are corrected, if it's possible, I would like to get a little synopsis from Kay Miner again about the project itself, because just trying to recollect what we had looked into in the past. Because I know we talked about some of the things at Park Lane retrofitting, and what it was the only school that we hadn't done the geothermal.
The survey would have to be conducted in order for you to know the detail of that. But we've invited Eversource to send a representative to the meeting, to come to the meeting when this would go to vote, to be prepared to give you not only an update, but to answer any questions that you would have related to this. In addition to that, I would recommend that these two agreements be included in your board packet in advance, obviously, so that you would have an opportunity to read through those agreements and then be prepared to ask any additional questions that you might have.
Now, what would happen if we don't go along with this?
Recommended by U.S. Building Capital, certified by lead building, and then just certified lead building, that every 10 years we rental commission our buildings to make sure that these buildings are still meeting the design criteria of the HVAC systems that control those, the pumps, the motors, the oils, whatever's involved with the system. We got a quote for Quaker Hill, which is our next oldest school, and that's 70,000 square feet approximately, and that was about a $20,000 price tag. That's if we were to approach it in here. This building is much, much larger. The package on this is worth about $45,000. And they're willing to do it at no cost.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. And then the last thing, we just FYI, actually, the leasing agreement for 20 of the district copy machines expired July 28th. So there was a new lease that was created as a result of some competitive quotes being taken from 4 different companies. And after the work was done to decide which of those companies' proposals would provide the best services for the best dollar, and not only best services but enhanced services. Would it be possible to get better copier services for the same amount or even less money than what you were paying in your previous leasing agreement? And yes, it was possible. So the leasing agreement is now with a company called A&A Office Systems, and they have already installed the 20 new copiers in the schools, and as a result of that, there's an approximate $8,000 savings in that line item going forward, and the lease is for 5 years, so that would be approximately or projected $40,000 savings overall. So the lease, as you well know, has to be handled through a leasing company, and that company is called DeLage Layden, which is a company that does do business with municipalities and school districts. And when I asked for some references, if they were doing a similar work with any school districts that we know around here, they did offer me 3 school districts to connect with, and those reports are positive. So this has already occurred. This occurred over the summer. This doesn't take care of all the copiers in the district because you'll have another lease expiring at some point, but this is the 20 that needed to be replaced. That work has been done. And the old machines of course, had to be removed, and then, of course, anything related to installation had to occur. It was right at the beginning of the school year, but it was done, and I believe everything is working. Is everything working? All right. Very good.
Okay, does that include, do we get a break on the toner for those machines?
That
too, or
includes the
does
toner,
include-
yes.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. All right, so that's our report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're on to committee and other reports. Does anybody have any? Kevin, do you have a cable report?
I do, but you guys already jumped the boat on that anyway. But, Cave and Taps Convention is November 20th, 21st. The early registration expires on Monday, so if you are planning on going, you should let Joyce know before noontime on Monday. A couple of things that have come up over the last couple of weeks. The speaker for the Friday night banquet is going to be, should I just say, Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch. Carol Spinney, who has been Sesame Street's Big Bird and Oscar since 1969. That will be the speaker on Friday night. There is a possibility that on Saturday, for all you fitness gurus, there might be a free yoga class, if that entices you to go that much further. I'm all into yoga myself, so. So that's it. That's what I got for...
How about Zumba?
That's not on it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Does anybody else have any reports?
Nerd hasn't met all summer, so we have our first executive.
I'd like to ask Jay to give a school building committee report. We haven't had a meeting yet either, but Jay's up to date on, he's been running all these projects anyway, in charge of all these projects, but I just wanted you to let the board know how the high school's coming, especially with the roof vent and...
Well, the high school has come along very well this summer. We finished the film installation and it was certified today by the inspector.
Oh, great.
The roof vent has been pretty much directed how we're going to proceed. We had a meeting Tuesday with ONG and all allied restoration. They're going to be ordering repair parts, removing the entire rig cap and upgrading it so that this won't happen. I spoke with Al Cooper and Colonel Rep. Sharon, he's up to speed. Been dealing with Maureen on doing some restorative work into the swales and rain gardens. Some of the places. And that's pretty much it.
The schools look great. Thank you. And just so you know, all of these thank you notes on the bulletin boards are to Jay and Tom from the children from Camp Dash for the fun summer that they had and how they took care of them, and over at Great Neck School. If you get a chance, read them. There's a report. Okay, I have a Youth Service Bureau report. I won't take up your time, but I'm going to hand out the fall programs that they have planned, so you could look them over. You can see they're very busy as usual. They have information there too about the Thanksgiving food baskets and also about the Christmas holiday food baskets and gifts for children. They're going to also do Stuff the Bus again at Thanksgiving. And another program that's backed by popular demand is Saturday Night Out. And, I'm sorry. What they do is they take...
Please.
What they do is on October 3rd, November 7th, parents can drop off their children at the Youth Service Bureau, and they have, for a fee of $25, and they supply pizza and dinner. Pizza is their dinner, and that's included. And the ages of the children are 4 to 12, so the parents can go out and have a nice date night. Their children will be well cared for, and they can come back and pick them up. And as I said before, it's from 5 to 10. And that was a very popular program last year. And Camp Dash was a huge success. The students had a great time. And thank you to Great Neck School for allowing them to use it. And I think that's it. I don't have any other reports. Now, on to new business. Discussion and possible action regarding Positive Foundations curriculum, and that was enclosed in our packet.
So we had a group of teachers that worked over the summer, really under the leadership of our assistant principal, one of our assistant principals at Waterford High School, Allison Mosier, to really look at how can we support students' emotional needs. If we recall, from a SRBI perspective, we're supposed to be looking at reading support, and we have that throughout the district, and at the high school with the readers lab, and math support with the math lab, which is extra help. And then from a behavioral aspect, which really, behavior is what comes when a student is really having some other emotional issues. And so what they've devised is not only a curriculum, but then have a process in place to identify and support the students who are faced with some of these challenges and because of that are not really doing well in the classes. And you kind of see the curriculum, you see the overview, and I'm going to just ask Allison if you want to add anything to that, or feel free to ask questions.
Just quickly, we want to address helping students be able to understand themselves and kind of manage their behavior, manage their emotions, and also to be socially aware, kind of read those nonverbal cues and verbal that they get from other people and that they give off to help them with their interpersonal relationships. And also just responsible decision making. One of the expectations is that we're going to send students out, they're going to be good citizens. And so we really want to help the kids that are struggling with making responsible decisions in their personal life and their school life and out in the community. So we try to target that with 3 units. There are a lot of things under each unit in terms of different things that we're going to target. It'll be individualized based on each student's needs. And so for some students, they may be in there for a quarter. Other students may be in there for a year.
And like our other SRBI classes for math and reading, the high school issues an unweighted quarter credit for each marking period that the children are in this and not like in a study hall.
Any questions from any board members? Greg?
That was really my question. I think the answer, the main answer is that this is not a mandatory program. It's not bumping some other program. Based on identifying students who have a need. It's just a way of assessing them.
That is correct. That's absolutely it. So from if we think about SRBI, it's basically saying if kids need a little more help, how can we help them? We have already presented to the board several years ago mechanisms for the academics, and now we're really hitting their social emotional needs in a similar way. For students who may need just that little boost, as Allison said, for a marking period, or maybe needs to be in there for a while. And the goal is really to, if their requisite academic or sort of emotional health is in check, then they'll be able to flourish in the classroom. And that will hierarchy of needs.
Thank you. I'm kind of backing up on what Greg just asked, but could you just go over the process a little bit again? How the children would be identified with? How does that work? Because I understand the other pieces with the math and
the care team, but I'm going to defer that to Alex.
There are several markers that we'll use, so they're great. The students are struggling in class. Sometimes students struggle in class, but their test scores are good. They're just not able to attend or get the work done, or they're getting kicked out a lot. So it'll be raising classes, office referrals, the number of office referrals, their connectedness. If we see a student who is completely isolated from their peers and doesn't seem to have any adult connection, that might be somebody whose name would be brought to the care team, and attendance. So if we have a student whose attendance is poor, maybe we're not pulling them in, maybe we're not engaging them, and so we want to meet the student's needs. And so those will be the primary purposes.
And just adding a little bit to the attendance, truancy issues are very difficult. From a court referral system, they've sort of almost pushed that responsibility back to youth service bureaus to help with the JRB. We have actually further separated our JRB into having one just to kind of tackle these attendance issues, and a lot of it is linked to these emotional kind of reasons why they're not coming to school, and so the additional, if you will, safety net support that this can provide can only complement and strengthen the systems that we already have.
And I will say one other, we're also allowing students to self-select. They feel like they need a place to go to get a little comfort.
I'm just very pleased to see this, and I'd be interested to see, that this is our first time with this, to see if it doesn't have an impact as we go along with our attendance and with suspension and all the other pieces. I just think it's wonderful avenue to proceed down. So thank you very much.
Credit goes to the high school. They've seen the need, and collectively they said, how can we do something different to sort of ameliorate this growing concern?
Great.
Any other questions? I just have a couple. Can the students, for instance, if you see them having a problem their freshman year, can they retake this course all throughout the whole high school? I was very impressed with the program, and I think this will help a lot of students. And I know it's extra work, but I would like to see this maybe in the middle school too, so we can help students even younger.
We talked about that in the middle school. Did you mind about?
Yeah, we're using a program called Mind Up, which is doesn't get actually grant for students grant. Really about kids being in touch with triggers in the classroom setting. We experiment a little bit with one team, and our new social workers are going to continue on with it. And it's sort of similar, but our class is more of a preventive measure than mistake. And we get stress that in it. There's teams involved in sort of monitoring. So it's similar, but it's not quite a class.
Well, that's great, because middle school is a tough age group, you know, and then I'm really happy we're going to be helping some of these high school students. That's great. Let us know how it works out. Thank you.
So we would be looking for possible approval, especially because we're issuing credit.
Ann?
I'd like to make a motion that the Waterford Board of Education approves and adopts implementation of the Positive Foundations curriculum.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Kevin? Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, now we're down to review of possible action authorizing our incoming superintendent to sign the ED 099 child nutrition reimbursement claim form and act as signatory on business-related accounts as necessary, effective September 8, 2015.
I so move.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously. Okay. So now we are down. First reading of policies.
So just a few, meaning 12, policies, so I'll try to be succinct. The first one is really a review and consolidation of the 4 existing budget policies related to budget creation, adoption, transfer into one more comprehensive policy. This, of course, was really a direction that the board charged our interim superintendent with, and Dr. Griffin really worked with a lot of models across the state as best practice, and we looked at our existing policies and how can we thread them together to have one very comprehensive way that we really are doing our budget. And so we took and sort of broke out the different sections where the other policies were, and you see where we've changed some of them. You'll notice on the letter A in the bottom, the 15 different categories of how we currently organize our budget. And then sort of a new enhanced budget reporting and line item transfers. Sections have really been added to the budget. And as shown in your consent agenda this evening, with the columns of what transfers occurred in our current budget, you'll see how we'll be reporting out on a monthly basis if we have to move things to different objects. So I'll be happy to work with Kay to try to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Jody, it's not really a question, but I just was happy to see you over the week going. This is so much more comprehensive and easy to follow. If you look at this now with all of the different aspects of the budget put together, it flows very nicely and explains it very well and actually puts into the policy what we actually do with our budget. So at a first reading, it looks like a much better improvement. Thank you.
Anybody else? I know we discussed this at our policy committee meeting. Okay. Sure.
So just the first reading tonight. Another, this one would be, we reviewed, the board really expressed through its attorney to kind of look at ways that personnel matters come to the board, and we uncovered a kind of an antiquated policy that Ann Littlefield reviewed and really is recommending for deletion. The policy here really is not needed because we have processes in place for handling personnel matters, and we also are respectful to the processes and sort of grievance procedures that are outlined in all of our collective bargaining agreements anyways, which really outline how disagreements are adjudicated. So this one could go up for deletion tonight, because all you need is one meeting to do that if the board desires.
Yes.
All of this back to 3101.
Sure.
Just a minor point. If you look at 3101.3D, we've gotten away from traditional language. You have in an amount less than 10,000 rather than an amount not more than 10,000, and as a result, you have a gap because above any funds in excess of 10,000 should be subject to transfer. Below you have less than 10,000, so you have a 10,000 transfer is not covered. If you go back to traditional language, it's not covered.
Thank you. So we will have a second meeting to show that. Thank you. So,
did you want us to vote on
if the board would like to take that action, it's certainly in your right.
What's the board's pleasure?
Catherine, just a little more clarification. So what you're saying is that we can delete this policy fully because we already have a mechanism in place for a complaint through the grievance process, but if a teacher or staff did not want to go through the grievance, would they have a way of notification of the process that they would use? In other words, they didn't want to file a grievance, but they wanted to report something or make a complaint. They would know how to go about that.
I'll comment. Well, the answer is yes, or it should be yes, that they would know that certainly they can go to their supervisor, but if things are not resolved at the lowest possible level, then every supervisor has a supervisor. And it's, within the organization itself, there is a mechanism for concerns to be addressed. And if administration does not know about the concern, or, administration, supervisor administration does not know about the concern, then that presents a problem and probably no potential for resolving that, finding a way to resolve it. So typically you have that understanding in an organization that you will attempt to resolve the problem at the lowest level, and that you will work within the system to do that. And you hire your administrators to manage your staff and to solve those problems. So that's really the relationship that you are honoring when you allow that process to work in that way.
Chance to eliminate a policy? How can you pass up on that?
I'm sorry?
Someone make a motion?
I move we delete it.
I
4135.4/.
I'm not 100% behind deleting it. Not without taking the next month to look at it. I don't know, sometimes I think it's, you should always have an opportunity to go above. I mean, we already had it happen and we acted on it. So, I mean, it did come into play already.
So then we made it for the second reading?
Yes, it's the second reading.
Why don't we think about this?
think about it. That's a good idea. I want to.
You want to be able to specify what's covering it, what procedure we have, what policy we have.
Right, we want to make sure that everybody has a fair chance.
Then to give direction back to us, can you please give us an idea of what your specific questions would be and what information you would specifically want to hear from us in order for you to feel that you are making an informed decision about this policy?
I think we would need to know the steps that an employee could go through in order to have a complaint heard.
Okay.
Yes, I agree with
All right,
that.
we'll make note of that. Other questions?
The original intent of this policy.
Okay.
Is the intent of this policy to let staff know that they can go to a higher level if their issue is not resolved at a lower level? Is that the intent of this policy? And if so, do we have something else in writing that says that same thing?
Okay, all right.
Yes.
All right, other questions or comments?
Anybody else?
Or clarification that we can offer?
Well, is this language in any of the contracts that we're currently with now also?
This exact,
Correct.
well, each employee contract will have language that specifies what steps members of that union can take.
Okay.
If they do have a complaint or grievance, absolutely, that is spelled out. I'm sure Martha would agree that that's very clear language in those contracts.
But not all of our employees are covered under contract.
Okay, so, all right, what would be a procedure that would be either presented as, this is a regulation, or this is a procedure, or what part of those contracts would inform that employee as to what steps he or she should take? All right, anything else? Jason?
Not right now, but yeah. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea to delete it, I just don't want to, I don't think we have to make that decision tonight.
No, you've already decided you're not, but I'm just trying to get clarification to help prepare for more information for you when you look at this again. Because that's our job.
Right. And Sherry's point, too, I think is very important. We know some employees that don't have contracts. I just want to make sure that they have steps they can take in order, if they do have a business.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you. So the next first reading would be policy 5113, student attendance, and this really went into effect during the 14-15 school year. So our policy is catching up to the actions if we needed to take this already, and it would be for children ages 5 to 18 in public schools who have a parent, legal guardian that is an active member of the armed forces, who has been called into duty or who is on leave or returned from deployment, could be granted up to 10 days of excused absence for visits to that armed service person. So that's the genesis of that policy. Is there any questions?
Anybody have any questions? I was happy to see that added. And then the policy's been working well, right?
It has.
Okay.
But this is just a clarification through a legislative change. The next first reading would be policy 5118.1 with respect to homeless students. And our current policy was really outdated and has been revised through legal counsel's model to really have the regulations reside within a policy. Been reviewed by our Director of Special Services, who is our homeless liaison as well. And as you recall, we're unique in this town because every child that's placed at the Waterford Country School through DCF placement technically would qualify under the homeless policy and provisions.
Any questions or comments on this? Kathy, I had no idea you had to do this too. You have a full plate.
So hearing no questions on that one, we'll move to policy 5125, student record. There have been some revisions with disclosure of information pursuant to the school lunch program. There's been also some related disclosure information to DCF with the Uninterrupted Scholars Act. In addition, a provision with Public Act 14-229 related to expunging students' expulsion records have been updated to have a revised timeline for parents in accordance with recently revised special education regulations. So this is a well-established policy already, and those are just the changes that are made in this one.
Any questions or comments about the policy?
Craig, under the access to education records, if you look for the regular education students, if there's a request made, there is up to 45 days, and the special ed is 10. And I'm just wondering, do we have any latitude in establishing a time frame? Because 45 just seemed like such a large amount of time.
Well,
to me, anyway.
Special ed request,
Not that one.
That's tight with the 10 days. The maximum opportunity would be 45 days, but from a practical matter, we get to it as soon as we can, and we're highly efficient here. So
it never goes out.
I think it would be unheard of to have gone that long. So could the board tighten up their policies tighter than state law requires, yes, you could. This would leave us at least with an opportunity, if there was a specific issue of finding a record, to have up to that day, many days, but you do have assurances that we do it in the most expeditious manner possible.
We thought that you wouldn't delay it for...
I believe that 45 is the
standard.
The purpose limit.
Yeah.
I was just looking to see if it was a little too long. Yeah. That's fine.
Any other questions?
Yeah, if I may, just because I think maintaining privacy is a very important issue, data privacy and student confidentiality and all those things. So I was just curious on, let's see, what page it would be. Good. Line item 344 is good. There is exception, I think, to without consent, some identifiable information can be released, and the one I just circled volunteers, that's all. And maybe we could just look at that. That kind of troubles me a little bit I don't know who that is. I know it's with a contractor or consultant, but volunteer, would that be a volunteer within the company that it's going to? I mean, that volunteer takes on another connotation.
Sure. So in a practical matter, our youth service department really screens volunteers through Dominion to work in our schools, and we've had that long standard practice where those people from Dominion would come in probably during the lunch recess period and work with a child, and we wanted to let the volunteer know the child's name so that they could have a conversation with the child, and that would be kind of that identifiable information as an example of a volunteer.
Right. Well, that, in the case you would cite, that would seem very innocuous, because I was looking at more substantial information that might be divulged to a consultant or contractor to a volunteer within that group.
So
I just, a little
let me do some research and thinking around that area, and then bring those results, answers to you for the next meeting.
Thank you. Okay.
Anybody else?
I'm sorry, let me just capture that note for a moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Clarification, just under D, under access to education records, just throughout the policy we say school official, and then it says school professional. I don't know if there's a distinction between the two, or it was... Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. The line number would be 193.
So Kathleen, let me look at the coherence of those two terms and bring that to the board as well.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay, under the next one, the policy 41.21, administering of medication, and this was effective July 1, 2014. Schools are now required to maintain EpiPens for the purposes of providing emergency first aid to a student who's experienced an allergic reaction, even if the student doesn't have prior written authorization for that. So we have made the policy changes, and our VNA has been trained into that, and we've had that in each of our schools' nurse's office. So we're in compliance already.
Any questions or comments about this policy? Craig, I'm not sure if I asked this question in your policy meeting or not, but if a student is highly allergic to something, does the teacher have an EpiPen in the classroom, or is there enough time for the student to get to the school nurse if there's an emergency? Or if they're outside in the playground?
Yeah, so it would depend on the child's severity of allergy, but generally speaking, it's in the nurse's office. generally speaking, the teacher would be aware of that health care plan, and people who would be interacting with that child would also be aware of that health care plan, so that would extend...
Like the playground aides, they would know. Okay.
Exactly, to those folks as well. And if the person was highly allergic, we have had opportunities where playground aides would have to wear a first aid satchel, and so it would be right there immediate, and people would be trained.
We did that at the Central School also?
Yeah, we have that in the past.
That's good. Thank you.
Moving right along in our policy work, next one will be policy 6114, emergency disaster and preparedness. And basically, in looking, last year we brought forth our school security and safety plan, which is policy 6114, and it's been revised to include our lockdown procedures, our shelter in place, as well as what we would do for fire drills and bomb threats. And so because that's covered in that plan, which is really this policy, we're seeing that the standalone fire drill policy and bomb threats are kind of redundant now. And so we would be looking to have this one policy sort of capture that we have this plan, and you know about this plan, and if that's approved, to delete those standalone policies for this one comprehensive one.
Any questions or comments? Okay.
It's just that on the agenda it says preparation, and then on the thing it says preparedness.
Thank you. So for the second reading, you take action, we'll make sure that's correct. And if we can move to second reading.
Go ahead.
So, second reading of our smoke-free policy, because we've talked about these before, there wasn't much discussion at the last meeting or questions, so if you thought of some between now and then, I'll be happy to answer it. Otherwise, we would be entertaining a motion for approval.
Is there a motion of approval for, do you want us to do them all together or separately?
Probably separately, in case somebody has one policy that they don't want to move forward.
Okay. So who would like to make the motion that the Waterford Board of Education approve policy 1331, the smoke-free environment, which replaces policies 4118.235 and 4218.235, the smoke-free environment as presented. Sharon and Dave. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously.
And then do we want to delete those two policies we just referred to as well? Guess we could have been sophisticated in the motion to incorporate that, but we would have those two policies now that are redundant.
Okay. Do you want us to amend the motion or just vote?
That's up to the board. You could amend the motion to delete those policies if that's...
Move we delete those two policies.
Second.
There we go.
All right. Any more discussion? So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried.
Okay. So, how drug-free workplace of schools policy really talked about the e-cigarettes as well as medical marijuana laws. So we're looking to adopt this policy. If there's any questions.
Any questions or comments? Okay, someone like to make the motion?
This is very minor, but as I read through the first paragraph, this is second reading, so I'm just saying, I kind of reworded it a little bit because the first and the second part were almost virtually saying the same thing.
Okay.
So may I read it to you, and then if the board prefers that, because I think as you read it, it says, let me just tell you what I put, and then it doesn't really interfere. It just puts it together that the purpose of this policy, rather than saying it down again in the bottom, in accordance with the state law and the Drug-Free Workplace Act, is to establish and maintain an alcohol, tobacco, and drug-free workplace.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Did you get that? Is that all right with everyone?
So that the Waterford Board of Education approves policy 4118.232 and 4218.232, drug-free workplace as presented and amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Dave.
I said 11.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
So we talked about adults, now talking about students on the same issue. Again, this is just a regulation change, so this is more for information. Just to clarify that student use of drugs at students may be covered under certain prescription provisions, not to be using it kind of on school grounds, and that's really with the medical marijuana. So because that's a regulation, it doesn't necessarily require board action, just notification. With respect to our bullying policy, 5131.911, the General Assembly amended the bullying prevention and intervention laws with several respects. Among the most significant, the scope of the bullying statute has been expanded beyond bullying to teen dating violence, and a question was raised by Kathleen around the term recent and asking Abe what that term meant. That's really copied right out of the legislative statute, and so we would basically say to our principals, we would be listening to the student's complaint and taking into account if that's still an issue, we would be using recent with that. But there hasn't been any more clarification on that term.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Is there any discussion on this policy? Okay, can I have a motion, please? What, can I read it? Or?
I can read it. That the Waterford Board of Education approves policy 5131.911, bullying as presented.
Thank
Second.
you. Second? Heather?
Yep.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carried unanimously.
And on our final policy, policy 5114, our student discipline, really, as you'll know, Public Act 14.229 really prohibits boards of education from shortening expulsions to mandatory expulsions, which is of a firearm or deadly weapon, and also gives some clarity on how to expunge records. So those are the changes. If you have any more questions.
Any questions or comments from anybody? No, these policies are also mentioned in the student handbook too, right? And what? Okay.
And do we have those at the board?
Yeah.
At the board, we have handbooks from all three levels. So you'll see that we reference policies. We try to capture the essence in those, and then we have all of these policies on our website if parents want to really read everything.
I need a motion.
And go ahead.
That the Waterford Board of Education approves policy 5114, student discipline as presented.
Second? Lisa, you want a second? Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, that concludes our public meeting, and then I need a motion to
So
and
moved.
invite Peg. Okay. Okay, is there a
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much for coming. Andrew, our meeting's just an extra one. You can do a lot of talk.